Okay, we're looking at page 36, homework number 7. The first thing we can do with this monstrous sentence is to cut out some of the redundant words. Some words really don't need to be here. Proof by scientific means is the same as scientific proof. In fact, if you don't really care what kind of proof, you can just say proof. Is there a kind of proof that is not a scientific proof? I guess you could say logical proof, but we're not talking about logic, we're talking about science. So we can just leave the word proof. Next, a causal link. Causal means cause and effect. I don't think we need to specify that. We can just say that there's a link. Diseased entities. What is a diseased entity? I have no idea. It just means diseases. Entity means being, something that exists. Yeah, I have no idea. So it just means diseases or disease. Yeah, diseases, plural. Then you have, look at this, cardiac heart diseases. Cardiac means related to the heart. So you don't need the word cardiac. You can just say heart diseases. You don't even need to say diseases because you already have the word diseases in the previous line. Uh, uh, so you could say related to the heart. A strong statistical correlation. Statistical here means using math. But again, I don't think we need to say that. We're talking about a connection between smoking and disease. You don't need to say the connection is based on math. So you could just say there's a strong correlation or a strong connection. Smoking behavior. Is there smoking behavior that is not smoking? Like if you carry around a lighter, is that smoking behavior? It just means smoking. There's no need for the word behavior. Officially stated position. Can you have a position that you do not officially state? Like, can you say, I believe in something, but you never say that you believe in this thing? In that case, it wouldn't matter. Nobody would know that you believed in it, so it wouldn't matter. So here, you don't need officially stated. Position is fine. So at this point, the sentence now reads something like, insistence that there is no proof of a link between tobacco consumption and various diseases related to the heart and malignant growths. Despite the fact that there is a strong correlation between smoking and such diseases, is no longer the position of cigarette companies. Still not a great sentence, but we're getting there. Then we can use some ideas from last week. The subject is insistence, which is an abstract subject. You have no idea what this means. And the verb is here. Is the main verb. Another abstract, empty verb. So we can flip this sentence around, right? The main actor of this sentence is cigarette companies. So we can reverse it. The subject could be cigarette companies no longer take the position, no longer insist on the position that there's no proof, blah, 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 despite the fact that blah, blah, blah. So now we have a concrete subject and a better verb. It's not a good verb. Insist is also kind of abstract, but it's better. And at least now the subject and the verb are close together. Okay, let's see the answer that I have prepared. So if you want to use more than one sentence, the first answer, there is a strong correlation between smoking and diseases such as heart diseases and cancer. Oh yeah, that's right. Malignant growth. This just means cancer. So heart diseases and cancer. That's your first sentence. However, The official position of cigarette companies was that there is no scientific proof of a link between them. That is no longer true. Okay, so the middle sentence is still not perfect, but now the meaning is much more clear. Um, if you want to stick to one sentence, you have a few more answers possible. The official position of cigarette companies is no longer that there is no scientific link between smoking and diseases such as heart diseases or cancer, even though they are strongly linked. So we have cut away a lot of empty language, and we have preserved the key meanings of this sentence. But we can do better. Like, even though they are strongly correlated, you don't really need to say that, even though it goes in the opposite direction, right? So if cigarette companies know there's a link, if cigarette companies know that there is a connection, but then they officially deny that there's a connection, you already have two opposite positions. Either smoking and diseases are related, or they are not related. If the companies say they are not related, and now they no longer say this, you don't need to say that the new thing is they are related. It's already implied in the change. If it's not A, it must be B. You don't have to say both. So following that principle, a better sentence, a shorter sentence, cigarette companies no longer claim that smoking does not cause heart disease and cancer. That's basically the meaning of this sentence. And if you want an even shorter sentence, remember, the shortest sentence may not be the best answer. You may be giving up too much, you may be losing too much information. But if you do want a shorter sentence, that would be number 4. Cigarette companies have stopped insisting that smoking does not cause illness. So we've basically combined heart disease and cancer into just illness. This is a great example of what I was saying last time. Some companies want to hide information from you while they are telling you that information. You can imagine that this is something that a cigarette company might have to say according to law, that smoking causes diseases. But they don't want to say it. So instead, they give you this really long and complicated sentence. And so if somebody sues them in court and says, hey, they never told me smoking would make me sick, they can point to this sentence and say, yeah, we did. But of course, the point is to make sure you don't understand what they're saying. Exactly. So again, it's very important to understand how style and grammar work to make sure you're getting the information that you need to know, right? 4 lines of empty verbiage boils down to this. Cigarette companies have stopped insisting that smoking does not cause illness. Questions about number 7? Okay, let's go to number 8. The continued and unabated emission of carbon dioxide gas into the atmosphere, unless there is a marked reduction, will eventually result in serious changes in the climate of the world as we know it today. Okay, this one is actually quite easy to fix. 2 principles. Cut out unnecessary words and put this subject and verb together and move extra information to the back. So cutting out unnecessary words, unabated means it does not stop. So it just means continued. Carbon dioxide gas. Carbon dioxide, 二氧化碳. It's hard not to make it a gas. You can turn it into a liquid, 液态, but you need a lot of special tools and conditions. Basically, if you see, okay, you can't see carbon dioxide. If there is carbon dioxide in your environment, it is going to be gas. So you don't need the word gas. Uh, Marked reduction just means a significant reduction, a large reduction. That's okay. We can keep this. But if you have marked reduction and then you have serious changes, yeah, okay, that's fine. It's not exactly the same. The climate of the world. Climate just means weather patterns across large areas. So I don't think we need of the world. And then as we know it today, this just means today's. So climate of the world as we know it today just means today's climate. So that's cutting out extra words. And then the subject is emission, kind of empty. We can change that into a gerund, right? Emitting carbon dioxide gas. Something, it's not a big change. Well, let's keep that for now. But this is the subject. And then the verb is will eventually result in. So that's a bit too far. We can move the middle part to the back. So the continued emission of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere will eventually result in, okay, we don't need eventually. Will result in just means will eventually result in. The same thing. Will result in serious changes in today's climate unless there is a marked reduction. That's better, but we can do even better than that. Okay, so in this first answer, we have taken the subject emission and turned it into a verb, emit. Continuing to emit carbon dioxide into the atmosphere will result in serious changes in the climate of the world unless there is a marked reduction. Better. And then if you really want the short one, the last one, continuing to emit carbon dioxide will cause serious changes in the global climate. And you'll notice we don't have this anymore because this idea, unless we stop, is already implied in the word continuing. If you don't continue, you have stopped. If you don't stop, you're going to continue. You don't need to say both. Okay, questions about number 8? All right, number 9. You know, as someone who writes for part of my job, seeing these crazy sentences is it's exciting because I get to like cut away, but it's also very depressing because people actually write like this. While grade inflation has been a subject of debate by teachers and administrators and even in newspapers, employers looking for people with high levels of technical and analytical skills have not had difficulty identifying desirable candidates. Okay, so we have a few keywords here. Grade inflation, which means you get an A, you get an A, everybody gets an A. Um, who is debating this idea? Teachers, administrators, which means staff, 行政人员, newspapers, they're all talking about this idea. So that's the first half of the sentence. The second half of the sentence talks about employers looking for workers who have technical and analytical skills. And it's saying that these employers or these bosses have not had difficulty. It's not hard to identify or to find people that they want, that they desire, that they want. So we have two ideas and they're going in opposite directions. That's what this while means. While means A, even though A, B, or A but B. So they're going in two opposite directions. And it looks like the main point is about the employers. So we should start with that. Employers, that's the subject. The verb is have not had difficulty. So we can flip the two halves of this part. Employers have not had difficulty identifying candidates. You don't need desirable candidates. What is an undesirable candidate? A candidate is somebody that you're considering. Why would you consider somebody that you don't want? So you don't need desirable candidates. Have not had difficulty identifying candidates with, like, candidates just means people, right? So candidates with high levels of technical and analytical skills. And then we have to reverse the direction. So something like, uh, even though grade inflation has been, okay, a subject of debate, we can turn this into the verb, has been debated by teachers and administrators and even in newspapers. Let's see if we can turn this into a list. Teachers, comma, administrators, comma, and newspaper editorials, 社论, something like that. Okay, so that's a slightly better sentence. What we have so far is employers have not had difficulty identifying candidates with high levels of technical and analytical skills, even though grade inflation has been debated by teachers, administrators, and newspaper editorials. And with this slightly better sentence, we realize that the logical connection is very weak. You need something to point out why somebody would talk about these two ideas at the same time. And the connection is, the assumption is if everybody gets an A, you can't tell who has high level skills. So maybe employers would find it harder to find people who have those skills. And this sentence is saying that's not true. Even when everybody gets an A, employers can still find highly qualified people. So let's see the answers that I have prepared. Teachers, administrators, and even newspapers. Okay, so we're starting with the other half of the sentence as the subject. Have been debating grade inflation. Great. Look, the original one said by teachers. This is the passive voice, 被动. We can switch this to active voice by using these three as your subject. Teachers, administrators, and newspapers have been debating grade inflation, but employers have not had difficulty identifying candidates with, okay, high levels of, you can just say good technical and analytical skills. We can improve this. Starting with employers. Employers have had no difficulty identifying skilled employees. Look, it says technical and analytical skills. What other skills are there? I guess they're like people skills, but we don't really test for people skills in school. So if you're talking about grades, you're probably only talking about these two kinds of skills: how to do something and how to think. Technical means how to do something, analytical means how to think. So if you're already talking about grades, you don't need to say these two kinds of skills. So identifying skilled employees, even though teachers, administrators, and newspapers continue to debate grade inflation. And then the shortest version, this might blow your mind. The public, teachers, administrators, newspapers, you add that together, that means public. The public debate over grade inflation. So now your subject is not employers, your subject is not these people who are debating, your subject is the debate. The debate is your subject. Over grade inflation has not made it hard to hire skilled employees. And you don't even need employers. Who is doing the hiring? Who is hiring people? It's obviously employers are hiring people. So the word hire already includes the word employer. You don't need to say both. See, again, look at that. 3 lines into 1. and you have the same basic meanings. Questions about number 9? All right, let's look at number 10. Although, when you see a long sentence that begins with although, you know you have to prepare yourself because the subject is going to come much later. Although one way to prevent foreign piracy of DVDs is for criminal justice systems of foreign countries to move cases faster through their systems and for stiffer penalties to be imposed. Subject: no improvement in the level of expertise of judges who hear these cases. Verb: is expected anytime in the immediate future. Okay, so this sentence is saying that there's a problem, and the solution to this problem is to go faster and to levy stiffer penalties, which means to impose higher fines. If you break this law, instead of NT 1,000, you now have to pay NT 10,000. So those are the two solutions, but the solutions are not being executed. They're not being done. That's the second half. No improvement. So that's the basic idea of this sentence. So it looks like the important thing to say is there are solutions, but they're not happening. So we need to understand that there are solutions first before we can understand why we should care about the expertise or the no improvement part. So the order of the sentence the order of the ideas will be basically the same, but we're going to turn the first half into the main sentence. And we're going to cut out some extra words as we go. One way to prevent foreign piracy of DVDs, so this is foreign DVD piracy, which means like illegally copying and selling, is for criminal justice systems. We can just say justice systems of foreign countries. So that's foreign justice systems to move cases faster through their systems, just means to move faster, and for stiffer penalties to be imposed. Okay. I wonder, is that one way? It looks like two ways. Anyway, that's not the point. So blah, 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 but improvement is a weak subject. We're talking about expertise, right? In fact, we're talking about judges. The judges who hear these cases, so like the relevant judges. The relevant judges have not increased their level of expertise. Well, okay, we're talking about the future. The relevant judges will not have increased their level of expertise in the near future. We don't need any time. Any time is useless. The immediate future just means the near future. So it has improved. We now understand what it's saying. Let's see if we can make this even better. Sorry, I should read you the whole sentence, the whole new sentence, right? One way to prevent foreign DVD piracy is for foreign justice systems to move faster and for stiffer penalties to be imposed. But the relevant judges will not have increased their level of expertise in the near future. Let's see if we can make this even better. Okay, so the first answer uses more than one sentence. One way to prevent foreign piracy of DVDs is for foreign criminal justice systems to process cases faster. So this is move cases faster through their systems, is to process these cases faster, and impose stiffer penalties. Actually, yeah, that's good. The subject of the first one, foreign justice systems, move cases faster and impose penalties. We don't need the passive voice. It can be active, impose. However, no improvement is expected soon. Any time in the immediate future is soon in the expertise of judges who hear these cases. Slightly better, one sentence. One way to prevent foreign piracy of DVDs is for foreign criminal justice systems to process cases faster and impose stiffer penalties, but no improvement is expected soon in the expertise of judges who hear these. I didn't change anything. I just changed however to but. Why did I do that? Okay, and then like the best answer I could think of, starting with the judges. No improvement is expected soon in the expertise of foreign judges who hear DVD piracy cases. That's good, right? What are these cases? They are DVD piracy cases. And if we're talking about foreign judges, then we're talking about foreign cases. We don't need to say foreign twice. Even though such piracy can be prevented with faster case processing and stiffer penalties. With is followed by a noun, so processing is a noun and penalties is a noun. So this last version moves the technical information to the very end when we are more prepared to hear that information. Questions about number 10? All right, number 11. I hate this sentence so much. Since school officials responsible for setting policy about school security have said that local principals may require students to pass through metal detectors 金属感应器 before entering a school building, subject, the need to educate parents and students about the seriousness of bringing onto school property anything that looks like a weapon, verb, must be made a part of the total package of school security. Okay, so the idea is there's a new thing happening. Students may have to pass through metal detectors when they come to school. Therefore, we need to let parents and students know you should not bring weapons to school. I mean, I guess you should never bring weapons to school, but this is a chance to remind people of this fact. Okay, so first, I think the sentence structure is fine. There's just too much empty words in the middle. If we cut out all the empty words, I think we can keep the same sentence order. Okay, so school officials responsible for setting policy about school security just means school security officials. Okay, local principals. The principal is the head of the school. So what is a non-local principal? Can you have a principal who is not at the school? So, but it's not talking about where the principal is from. It's just talking about a principals for each individual school. So you don't need the word local. A principal who runs one school is just this school's principal. So have said that principals may require students to pass through metal detectors before entering a school building. Where else would you put a metal detector? Would you put it in the cafeteria? No, you're always going to put it at the entrance. And okay, if you're putting it at the front door, would you want students to pass through as they go inside or as they come outside? You want to keep the school safe, so you're going to ask students to pass through it as they're going in. So you don't need this part. Before entering a school building, everybody knows that's when students will need to do this. The need, okay, so that's the first half of the sentence. We've cut out, I think, half of that sentence. Second half, the need to educate parents and students about the seriousness of bringing onto school property anything that looks like a weapon is the subject. No. Let's take parents and students as the subject. They're people, right? So parents and students must understand uh, okay, the seriousness of bringing onto school property anything that looks like a weapon. So if you bring something that looks like a weapon to school, it is very serious. I don't think that's what the sentence is trying to say. I think it's trying to say that students should not do this. So parents and students need to learn or need to be aware not to bring weapons, or I guess you could say weapon-shaped objects to school. Onto school property just means to school. And then this idea must be made part of the total package of school security. Okay, you know what? Need and must. These two things are saying the same thing, except the second one is saying the same thing with no meaning. To make it a part of the total package of school security just means when you're designing the security of the school, you need to make sure to do this also. So like this entire sentence just means need. Or not sentence, this entire part of the sentence just means need. So we can just cut it out. Okay, our sentence now reads, since school security officials have said that principals may require students to pass through metal detectors, parents and students must be aware not to bring weapons or weapon-shaped objects to school. Slightly better, or I should say much better. We can think about weapons or weapon-shaped objects. I'm pretty sure that school security officials will not wait until a student uses a weapon before they stop the student. They want to prevent that from happening. So the point is not, is it a weapon? The point is, could it be a weapon? So we can get rid of weapon. We can just say a weapon-shaped object. Okay, and then let's see how we can make this even better. So the first answer uses more than one sentence. School security policy officials have said that principals may require students to pass through metal detectors before entering a school building. This means that we must educate parents and students about how serious it is to bring to school anything that looks like a weapon. Okay, it's still kind of long, but it's easier to understand because the second half has been rewritten with concrete words, right? We is now the subject. Educate is the verb. Seriousness is how serious it is. And then we keep anything that looks like a weapon because that's not hard to understand. Okay, a one sentence version. School security policy officials have said that principals may require students to pass through metal detectors before entering a school building. So parents and students must learn, right? We must educate. We flip this around. Parents and students must learn how serious it is to bring to school anything that looks like a weapon. Okay, slightly better. Okay, and then we can simplify this more. Parents and students. So now we're flipping it around. We really care about what parents and students do. We don't really care about school officials. So starting with the main point, parents and students need to understand how serious it is to bring to school anything that looks like a weapon. Since principals, okay, cool. We don't even need this part. School security policy officials have said, we don't care. We just care what the thing is. We don't care who said it. So since principals may require students to pass through metal detectors before entering, according to school officials. If you really want to give a source, you can put it at the very end because it's not important. And then the shortest version, it's still 2.5 lines. Parents and students need to understand how serious it is to bring to school anything that looks like a weapon, since, as school officials have said, Principals may require arriving students to pass through metal detectors. Look at this. Before entering a school building now becomes arriving, which is the same thing. Okay, questions about number 11? All right, last one, number 12. If the music industry ignores the problem of how a rating system applied to offensive lyrics could be applied to music broadcast over FM and AM radio, then even if it were willing to discuss a system that could be used in the sale of music in retail stores, the likelihood of any significant improvement in its image with the public is nil. Okay, so first, I think I have to explain some of these ideas. A rating system for offensive lyrics. So in the US, there is censorship of public material in the sense that if something includes curse words or adult language or adult ideas, the music album will be slapped with a sticker that says parental advisory. It's telling parents, maybe you don't want your children to listen to this. It's for adults only. That is not a law. That is just a guidance suggestion. For the same reason, musical artists will often put out two versions of the same song. The original version with curse words and adult ideas, and a so-called clean version without these things. So yeah, this is something that happens in the US. So you do need a rating system. So you have to figure out how to tell, is this okay for kids or is it not okay for kids? You know, just like we do for movies. They do that for music as well. And then this one, FM and AM radio. FM is, okay, 这是短波跟长波，叫什么？广播。So like radio, you can have short frequencies and long frequencies. Short frequencies have better quality, but they don't go as far. Those are called FM. Long frequencies go further, but they have lower quality. Those are called AM. So immediately you can say, we don't need this part because FM radio plus AM radio equals radio. If you have radio, you don't need to say FM. If you have both FM and AM, you don't need to say both. Although I guess today you do have to say, because now we also have satellite radio, 卫星广播, XM. That was not true when this was written. Okay, so today, if you want to separate out XM radio, okay, so you have FM, AM, and XM. XM is satellite, so like from space. If you want to separate out these two, then you have to say terrestrial radio. Terrestrial means from the Earth. So not from space, from the Earth. If you read science fiction, you will often see this root. Oftentimes, the name of Earth will be changed to Terra. Terra just means Earth, like the ground. If you play StarCraft, 星海争霸, the group called people is called Terran. They're humans from Earth. Okay, so the point of this sentence seems to be that the music industry needs this kind of rating system for radio, because if they only care about a rating system for music stores, it's not going to solve the problem. And the idea is because more and more people don't buy music, they listen to the radio. This is, of course, written before Spotify. Okay, so let's see how we can improve the sentence. I think the main idea is in the first half. The idea is the music industry has to solve this problem. So let's turn that into the main sentence. The music industry cannot ignore the problem of a rating system for uh, radio broadcast music. Semicolon. Otherwise, uh, simply using a rating system for music stores will not improve its image. 它的形象. That's the main problem in this sentence is how to improve music companies' image. Yeah, so that version cuts out all the extra stuff. Let's see if we can have a better version. Okay, so the first one is multiple sentences. Music on FM and AM radio needs a rating system for offensive lyrics. If the music industry ignores this problem, its image with the public will likely not improve. Right? The likelihood of any significant improvement in its image with the public is nil. Nil means nothing, zero. So its image with the public will likely not improve, even if it were willing to discuss a system for music sales in retail stores. Okay, so a lot of the extra words are still here, but it's easier to understand simply because we cut the sentence into two sentences. Better, the music industry's public image will not improve until it faces the problem of how to apply a rating system for offensive lyrics in radio music, even if it comes up with this kind of system for retail music. So this is a better sentence simply because we are comparing radio music to retail music. So when the reader gets to this part of the sentence and the reader starts reading this part, the pattern is similar. It is easier to understand. And then the best version. So it says will not improve until, right? So one way to say this is only when the music industry comes up with means formulates a system to rate offensive lyrics in radio music. Look, rating system is an empty noun. To rate is a concrete verb. To rate offensive lyrics in radio music, only when this happens will its public image improve, even if it devises, means comes up with, devises such a system for retail music. Do you think the last one is easier to understand? Okay, I hope it is because that's the goal of this series of questions is to take really bad sentences and help people understand them. Do you have questions about number 12 or any of the previous ones? Okay, so these answers are now available on Moodle if you need to double check. But last week's homework was not just this page, right? We also did page 37. Page 37 has the opposite problem. So page 36, the sentences were long and complicated. Here on page 37, the sentences are too short and disconnected. You have to find a way to put these sentences together into a paragraph that makes sense. So let's take a short break, and when we come back in 15 minutes, we'll see one way to do this. All right, page 37. So here we have a random, okay, not random, but we have a disconnected collection of sentences that should be made to flow together in some way. So let's look at what we have. Darla fainted. Darla was lying on the floor in a heap, which means in a pile. She's just like collapsed on the floor. Her legs were bent under her. She breathed in quick pants at a rapid rate. Henry came. He ran as fast as he could. He neared Darla and gasped. My angel, he said. His heart was beating. Like, thank God his heart is beating. If his heart was not beating, he'd be dead. His cardiologist would be worried about the fast rate. Henry did not care. Henry cared only about Darla. She was the love of his life. This is probably the best sentence in this paragraph. She was unconscious. He said, Angel Pie, you don't have to pawn your engagement ring. To pawn means to temporarily sell and maybe buy back later. 典当. He knelt next to her. Okay, so like this is a disaster of a paragraph. You know what's going on, but it doesn't attract you. It's not a compelling paragraph. It doesn't make you want to keep reading. There are two or three main problems. The one main problem is that each sentence is independent. It does not care about the previous sentence. It does not care about the next sentence. For example, Darla fainted. Darla was lying. If you care about the previous sentence, you can say she was lying. In fact, you could even combine them, right? Darla fainted into a heap on the floor. Right, so this is what I mean when I say each sentence is disconnected from the last. The second problem is that it doesn't know how to end. It ends by saying he knelt next to her. If you kneel next to somebody, we expect you to do or say something. But this is the ending of the paragraph. I think this sentence should come before, right? He knelt next to her and said, blah, blah, blah. So like the reason why this paragraph is so bad is because it doesn't make you feel like it is one situation. It doesn't move from one sentence to the next in a clear way, and it does not end with something that feels like an ending. So let's see what we can do with this. Okay. Why is Darla lying on the floor in a heap? Because she fainted. So we can put these two together. And then on the floor in a heap, and then her legs were under her. We can also combine this into one sentence. So 3 into 1. Darla fainted onto the floor in a heap, comma, with her legs under her. Let's see. Quick pants, rapid rate. These mean the same thing. So this sentence is she panted rapidly. Next, Henry arrives, and then Henry runs as fast. We can put these two together, right? Henry arrived, comma, running as fast as he could. And then we can also put these two together. He approaches Darla and then he gasps, my angel. So as he neared Darla, comma, he gasped, comma, my angel. So you can use gasp as a speech tag. You don't need said. And then these three can go together. His heart was beating. He was beating fast. His cardiologist or heart doctor would be worried, but Henry did not care. Henry cared only about Darla. Okay, so let's see. His heart was, okay, it says beating, but we need the idea that it's beating fast. So his heart was racing. And his cardiologist, we can make that better. His heart was racing so fast as to worry his cardiologist, but he did not care. Henry cared only about Darla. Oh, so romantic. So Look, at first it might look like these two sentences go together, but no, you want to keep these two sentences separate so that you can emphasize the difference. Henry does not care about his heart. He only cares about Darla. You want to keep those two ideas separate. She was the love of his life. Great sentence, no notes. Um, I guess, no, I guess we can combine them, right? She was and she was. So we can put these two together. The love of his life was unconscious. And then we put the last two together. He knelt next to her and said, comma, angel pie, blah, 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 blah. So if we put all of that together, Darla fainted onto the floor in a heap with her legs under her. She panted rapidly. Panting rapidly. Henry arrived, running as fast as he could. As he neared Darla, he gasped, "My angel!" His heart was racing so fast as to worry his cardiologist, but he did not care. He cared only about Darla. She was the love of his life was unconscious. He knelt next to her and said, "Angel pie, you don't have to pawn your engagement ring." Slightly better, right? Let's see the version I've prepared. Darla fainted. Strong opening, clear image. She was heaped on the floor with her legs bent under her, panting rapidly. Okay, so all of the sentences describing her are in one sentence. Henry ran to her as fast as he could. Okay, so we don't need to say he arrived. If he runs to her, then he has arrived. You cannot run to somebody without being there. So Henry ran to her as fast as he could. "My angel!" he gasped as he neared her. Okay, this is better because the point is what he says. The point is not as he neared her. That's not as important as what he says. So we can put it at the back. "My angel!" he gasped as he neared her. His heart was beating so fast that his cardiologist would have been worried. He didn't care. He cared only about Darla. She was the love of his life, and she was unconscious. Oh, I love myself. I love how I wrote this. So it's a series of events, right? A, B, C, and D, and it builds up tension until we get like, look, right? He didn't care about his heart. He only cares about Darla. She was the love of his life, and she's unconscious. That emotional build up and climax. And then finally, like this extra descriptive information, we can even just put in the middle. "Angel pie," he said, kneeling next to her. "You don't have to pawn your engagement ring." See, much better than the original. Questions about this page? So the key lesson here is a complete sentence gives you a complete idea, but it should also be related to the surrounding sentences. A period is not a wall. A period just tells you this is one complete idea. Right, so the main example is this series of sentences. Each one of these is a complete sentence, and yet they are in a series. They go together. It has to be this order. And this sequence of sentences builds up a single emotion. So a sentence is not an independent idea. It is only a complete idea. Okay, that was the homework. This week, we have even more exciting and interesting sentences to untangle. So let's go to page 38. Okay, so the introduction says these sentences are taken from student writing. They're real sentences that the textbook author has really discovered. You are the editor for these students. Rewrite the sentences, correct errors, combine ideas, and just generally make the sentence better. Which is what I hope you can do for the last question on the final exam. So let's look at the example. My idea of the most important thing in life. It is to be healthy. because a person can't enjoy life without health. Okay, so like the answer that it gives is, in my opinion, the most important thing in life is good health because a person cannot enjoy life fully without it. That's an okay sentence. I think you can just put these three together directly, right? My idea of the most important thing in life is to be healthy because a person can't enjoy life without health. I think it's a good sentence. So you can see there's no single standard answer. As long as it's a better sentence than the original, it's a good answer. So we have 11 of these. I'll give you, actually, let's do them three at a time. So for the first three, I'll give you 5 minutes, and then we'll compare answers. Wow, that was 5 minutes already? Time flies when you're having fun with grammar. Okay, so let's see number one. We went shopping after ate dinner, but the stores were closed. We had to go back home even we hadn't found what were we looking for. Tanjingwei, Tanjingwei. Yes. What is your answer for number one? This one, right? So how do we change this? Eating dinner. Okay, good. We went shopping after eating dinner. The grammar is correct. What else? Here? What should this be? Well, it says we went, right? Past tense. Were closed. I think this is fine. Okay, you mean change this to went? Okay, sure, why not? We went home. I think there's a connection here, right? The stores were closed. We had to go home. So if you change this to went home, you might have to add so. So we went home, right? What else? I'll give you a hint. Even if or even though. Good. Even though just means although. One more. No, no, this is the same as like this is all past tense. That's fine. Here. Yeah, what we were looking for. Okay, good. So those are all the grammar issues. Do you have suggestions for how to make the sentence better? No? Okay. So it's a series of three events, right? Went shopping, stores were closed, had to go home. Um, you know, you can combine all of this into one sentence. We went shopping after eating dinner, comma, but the stores were closed, comma. So we had to return. So we went home even though we hadn't found what we were looking for. That works. You can also move this to the front. After eating dinner, comma, we went shopping. Usually we put extra information at the back, but in this case, there's something after this sentence. If you put after eating dinner here, you're using extra information. You're putting it between two other more important ideas. So in this case, it would be better to move this to the front out of the way of everything else. And it's short. It doesn't take a lot of energy. Okay, good. Uh, question two. I want to explain that I know a lot of grammars, but is my problem I haven't enough vocabularies. Wang Peiqi. Let's start with the grammar errors. Have you noticed anything wrong with this sentence? Good. I want to explain. Good. What else? Good. This should be my problem is, not is my problem. How about this? Is this correct? Grammars. Right. Grammar, no S. You cannot count grammar unless you're talking about more than one language. How about this? Yes, vocabulary is also uncountable. Vocabulary is all of the words you are trying to learn, not every single word. If you have to talk about one of those words, you have to say a vocabulary word or a vocabulary item. Okay, and then a few smaller problems here. Okay, yes, you can separate it into two sentences, period, and then capital B. You can also add a comma. That could also work. Good. I haven't enough. Uh, this is technically correct, but it's very uncommon. A more common way to say this is, I don't have enough vocabulary. And then one last small problem here. Uh, my problem is that. Good, that. Because is, it's connected to a complete idea. That, and then this is being used as one noun. Okay, so the corrected sentence is, I want to explain that I know a lot of grammar, period, capital B. But my problem is that I don't have enough vocabulary. Good. Now, do you have ideas about how to improve this sentence? Okay, so first of all, if you keep this, that means that this person is trying to say that they know a lot of grammar, but they're having a hard time saying this because they don't have enough vocabulary. I don't think that's what this sentence is saying, because this sentence already tells us the thing that the person is finding it hard to say. Does that make sense? Should I use Chinese? 我好，我用中文解释一遍好了。我想解释，blah blah blah，但是我的单字不够。可是他这句话已经解释了啊，显然他不会单字不够啊，所以这句话并不是按照字面上这样讲的。So I think what the sentence is trying to say is, when I use the language, I want people to know that my problem is not grammar, my problem is vocabulary. So it's not about explaining anything, it's about showing people. And if that's true, this sentence is already showing people what the author wants to show people. So you don't need these 4 words. Again, should I use Chinese? 就如果他意思是说，我想让人知道我会文法，我只是不会单字，他这句话已经在显示这件事情了，所以他不用前面加这4个字。So we can take out the beginning. So the sentence begins with I know. Now, if that is the main idea, then the problem is not how much grammar, but how good is the grammar. So instead of saying, I know a lot of grammar, I think the author is trying to say, I have good grammar. And then finally, I don't have vocabulary. I think a better way to say this is, I don't know enough vocabulary. In fact, you don't even need my problem is. If you don't have enough vocabulary, the word enough means you have to have this much. If you don't have this much, it's a problem. So you don't need to say is my problem is. So the improved sentence says, I have good grammar, comma, but I don't know enough vocabulary. Yeah. Okay. Number 3. When I got lost in the bus station, a kind man helped me. He explained how to read the huge bus schedule on the wall, took me to the window to buy a ticket, and showed me where was my bus. I will always appreciate his kindness. Alex, how would you First of all, let's talk about errors. How would you correct number 3? At the bus station. Okay, so there is a difference, right? In the bus station or at the bus station. At means uh, you can think about it as a point on the map. It's a destination. It's the idea of a place. But here the author got lost. So we're talking about it as an actual physical space. In this case, in would be better. How about this? If you begin with when, where does the actual sentence begin? Here, right? A kind man. That's the subject. So in order to separate the two parts, you need a comma, right? If you begin with when, that's not a complete sentence. The sentence begins here, so you should separate the two parts with a comma. Okay? Okay. How about this? Period, good. Period, capital H. Okay, next, how about here? So you mean combine it with the previous sentence? Okay, do we need a comma? Say yes. Yes, we do, because it's 3 actions: explained, took, and showed. It's a list. All right, so explain, blah, 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 comma, took me to the window to buy a ticket. Do you need a comma here? Comma, and showed me where my bus was. Is this comma correct? Period, good. I will always appreciate his kindness. Good. So those are all the grammar mistakes. Do you have some ideas for how to improve the sentence? Okay, so for example, the first part, when I got lost, a kind man helped me. What kind of situation would you hear somebody tell you this sentence? This seems like the beginning of a story, right? So like when I got lost, it kind of assumes that you know that somebody once got lost here. So if this is really the beginning of a whole story, you need the word once somewhere in there. Once I got lost in the bus station, comma, and a kind man helped me. That would be a complete beginning with no prior information. Next, how to read the huge bus schedule on the wall. Okay, he explained how to read. You could just say explained, right? He explained the huge bus schedule. You don't need how to read. Same thing, to the window to buy a ticket. Again, assuming you don't have like automatic ticket selling machines, because this is a very old textbook. In order to buy a ticket, you have to go to the window. So you don't need to say to the window. Took me to buy a ticket is the same thing as took me to the window to buy a ticket. And then showed me where my bus was. You can also simplify this to showed me my bus. If you can see your bus, then you know where your bus is. So our improved sentence now reads, I once got lost in the bus station and a kind man helped me. He explained the huge bus schedule on the wall, took me to buy a ticket, and showed me my bus. I will always appreciate his kindness. Okay? Make sense? Great. Okay, let's do the next 3. I'll give you another 5 minutes. Maybe I should give you more time. I'll give you 6 minutes. All right, let's take a look at number 4. I had never understand the importance of no English language until I worked at a large international company. 蔡永庆, number 4. Okay, I had never understood, right? Have plus PP, past participle, understood. Okay, and then good, importance. The must have a noun, importance. And then good, of also needs a noun. The noun of know is knowledge. We're not using knowledge. We want an action. So knowing. And then you said English, no language, right? Good, knowing English. If you use the word language, you have to say the English language. Okay, and then no period. Okay, the sentence continues. English until I worked at a large international company. Okay. So do you have ideas about how to improve this sentence? For example, the importance of knowing English just means the importance of English. The point is not knowing English. The point is that English itself is important. Yeah. Um, and then if you have until here, which means this is a new period of time, this means that the previous period of time is now over. So you don't need the perfect aspect. You can say, I never understood. Right? Have means that it is part of a period of time that is now over. So we call it a perfect 完成式. But this idea is already part of the word until. So you don't need to repeat it twice. I never understood the importance of English until I worked at a large international company. Okay, great. Number 5. Eliza. Okay, hang on. So instead of saying since I was young, you say when I was young. Okay, do you need a comma here? Okay, so instead of teach me and my brothers English, me and my brothers is longer, English is shorter, so we move the shorter one here to teach English to me and my brothers. Period. Capital B. When we moved with a D, good, to another, good. Comma here, good. He, my father is already appeared, so we can say he. Yeah, instead of wasn't able to find, you can just say, I think you have to say couldn't find. Couldn't find another teacher for 5 years. You don't need this other. Good. One question. Do you need a comma here? Or you said when I was young? Yeah, okay, comma here. Good. So those are all the grammar issues. Do you have suggestions for how to improve the sentence? Not really? Okay, so you already improved some things, right? You moved the word English to the front. Uh, let's see what else we can improve. When we moved to another town, I don't think you have to say to another town. Unless you're moving somewhere in the same town. But if you're moving in the same town, you should still be able to hire the same teacher. So the idea that you can't find a new teacher tells us that you moved far away. So you don't need to say to another town. He couldn't find another teacher for 5 years. Yeah, I think you got most of it. Like if we really wanted to try to cut something, I don't think it's important that it's a woman. I mean, if you don't say it's a woman, then that changes our idea of it may or may not change our picture of what's going on. But whether or not the teacher is a woman has nothing to do with the rest of the sentence. So if you really needed to cut it down, you can take out the word woman. And then you can even, the original is find another teacher. You don't even have to use the word teacher. He couldn't find another for 5 years. And we know you're talking about a teacher. So the improved sentence now reads, when I was young, comma, my father found an American to teach English to me and my brothers, period. But when we moved, comma, he couldn't find another for 5 years. Okay, great, thank you. And number 6, I was surprised to see the room that I was given at the dormitory because there aren't any furniture and dirty. Tony, how would you, first of all, how would you fix some mistakes? Okay, so in English, furniture is uncountable. Okay. And it was dirty. Good. And then one more thing, you cannot start a complete sentence with because. So you're going to want to combine the two, right? Okay, so our error-free sentence now reads, I was surprised to see the room that I was given at the dormitory because there, there's another problem here. Was is in the past, aren't is in the present. So this should be weren't because there weren't. Okay, and then you can't count furniture, so there wasn't any furniture and it was dirty. Okay, now do you have ideas about how to improve this sentence? Excellent. So you're putting these two sentences together. You have noticed that no furniture and dirty can be used to describe the room. So you're adding it into the original sentence as description. So your new sentence is, I was surprised to be given a dirty room with no furniture at the dormitory. That's your new sentence. Good job. I would make, there's one more thing I think we can improve. You can also use dormitory as an adjective. So I was surprised to be given a dirty dormitory room with no furniture. Okay, great. So we're running out of time. There are a lot of questions here. So let's stop here. I do have a file of answers for this week's homework because next week is the final exam. We won't have time to compare answers. So this week's homework, go home, finish the handout, compare answers with the file on Moodle. And if you have questions, please ask me on email, on Moodle, on Teams before next week. Next week is the final exam. After the final exam, you have 1 week to write course reflections. These are worth 20% of your final grade. Course reflections are required. They are 20% of your final grade. There are certain guidelines, and you will see those guidelines when you know what, I'll just show you. Here's what it will look like. Write an essay in any language to convince me that from having taken this course, you have learned something meaningful. What you learned need not be limited to what was taught and can be inside or outside the classroom. What this means is you can say something that you learned directly or that you learned indirectly. Like maybe because you're taking this course, you have started noticing grammar mistakes out in the world and your life has gotten worse. That could be something you could write. The more details and analysis that you provide, the more convincing your essay may be. ChatGPT produces very unconvincing essays. You can use AI to help improve your grammar and spelling if you want to. I don't care if you like, I know it's a grammar class, but if your reflections don't have perfect grammar, that's fine. But if you do use AI, please use it with care. Don't just meaninglessly, mindlessly ask it to write this for you, because it is possible I will not give you points if I don't think that you wrote it. Your grade will either be 20 points, 10 points, or 0 points. And that is due 1 week after the final exam. Finally, if you want or need extra points, you can do this extra credit assignment, read the essay, and then write an essay of at least 1,000 English words, reflecting on your college life so far. If you have done this before, please tell me. I will give you another essay. If you do the same essay twice, I won't give you points. If your original score is below 60 and you do this and you do it well, I will give you 60. If your original score is 60 or higher and you do this and you do it well, I will give you somewhere between 3 and 7 points to your total score. And then because it does have a word count, right, at least 1,000 English words, be careful about the Google Docs error. Look at this picture. 2 words are highlighted, but it says 5 words. This can happen if you use Google Docs and then you save it as a Word file. It could result in this mistake. So my suggestion is just to use Microsoft Word. Don't use Google Docs. If you do find this problem, the only solution that I know is copy everything, open up something that is not Microsoft Word and not Google Docs, paste it there, open a new Microsoft Word file, copy everything from there, and then paste it in the new file. Very troublesome. Just don't use Google Docs. Questions? Okay, see you next week. Good luck.